short sidewalks now? Is it not in this yet?
Yeah, it's still,
Thing
we're
about-
done with the planning commission.
Okay.
The sidewalks.
We're live.
Well, they're just
Really? Yeah,
in the required. So we're just gonna look.
So, let me get this right, on the bylaws, we can actually vote this time,
yep,
and then
because it's in
the
there.
next meeting, we can
effective.
do something?
So it'll start November. It'll be
And then like May of 20.
So I'll be the first one to miss
On
the
the
first
student council
meeting.
agenda?
I'll have already an absentee for November.
Okay.
We're gonna need a note.
What's that?
We're gonna need a
Doctor's
note.
Oh, are we ready? Okay, it's 7:03, so I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Planning Commission, October 1st, 2020. The first item on our agenda is Pledge of Allegiance. Let's stand and do. I
pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is roll call. Amy?
Ms. Dobson?
Here.
Mr. Denny? Mr. Earhart?
Here.
Mr. Mitchell?
Here.
Ms. Collum?
Here.
Mr. Sly?
Here.
Ms. Squire? Mr. Welsh?
Here.
Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you. The next item is approve the agenda that stands. I'm assuming there's no changes to it. So we're just looking for a motion to approve the agenda as it stands.
Motion approved.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion's been seconded to approve the agenda as it stands. So go on the left.
Aye.
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 Motion passes 6-0. The next item is citizen participation. And I do believe we have someone signed up, but I think he's gonna speak during that particular segment. All right, so the formal commission action, we've got the approval of minutes from our September 3rd meeting. Does anyone have any issues with the minutes from our September 3rd? If not, we're just looking for a motion to approve those minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Second.
Okay, the motion's been seconded to approve the minutes from our September 3rd meeting. Start the vote on the left.
Aye.
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 Abstain.
Abstain.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0-2. The next item is a preliminary plat, 00030-2020, Estates of Wolf Creek, the Spring Hill Middle School, number 3. Mr. Burton, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, I'd need to.
Yeah, before we start, I think we need to disclose, have any disclosures or recuse ourselves, I think. Go ahead.
I'll have to recuse myself from this application in the next agenda item. So I'll
Thanks.
just wait in the hall. So don't forget about
Yep,
you guys.
wait in the call and we'll make sure you come back in. And if there's any
You
other,
wanna recuse yourself for the next two, Johnny?
and is there any, I don't think you have anything.
I do not.
And I think I have to disclose my wife's a principal in the school district. She's not in the middle school now, she's in the elementary. But I also live in the Estates of Wolf Creek, and that, I don't believe that's gonna affect in any way how I vote.
And my wife's on the school board, but this will not change, or will not affect how I vote.
And I work at this school, but I don't believe that it's going to affect my vote.
All right, now that we have that, I think, Mr. Burton, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good evening. Thanks for coming tonight, everyone. So the first item on the agenda here for the school, and it's a replat of the original preliminary plat for the school district for the middle school number 3. I want to make a statement that we did take and published this meeting and this re-preliminary plat. We did not send notification out to every property owner within the 200 foot. The code does say you're supposed to send it out, but this is a replat. The code says on a preliminary plat. And this is a replat of a preliminary plat. So if you have a problem with that, then we'll have to take these to the next meeting. But it was notified, and, I mean, in the official paper, plenty of time, the 20 days and all. So we wanted to make sure that you knew that.
And I don't think anyone has any issues with that.
I
And
guess the only
ahead.
question I have is, what is our precedent on that? Have we had
Well-
an issue with that previously?
No, I just wanted to make it clear to you
Okay.
that, you know, that, now, on the preliminary plat, the first preliminary plat they brought in, we notified by mailings and all. We felt that this, since this was a replat of a already approved preliminary plat with, minor changes basically, really. I mean, I know they're adding some lots and all, but it's along the street and it's already zoned for residential, so it makes no zoning changes or anything like that to the neighborhood.
And I have a question too on that. Is it typically the process that we do the replat after it's already been approved and then the city council
Well-
before?
This was a negotiational item at a later date by the school district, is the way I understand it,
Okay,
by the developer that sold the property.
okay.
So, I mean, we, like, Dayton Creek's a good one. I mean, we've replatted that thing 5 times.
At least.
You know, yeah, and so, you know, just replat after replat, so,
Yeah.
you know, that's what, and what we really look for on this is, was there a change? Typically, we look for, is there a change in the pattern of right-of-way, easements, and things like that? Size of lots don't make a lot of difference, I mean, it does, we need to review it and things like that. But, change of patterns is why we make them really come back to, replat. Now, this had no true change of roadway patterns, except if we remember in the original plat, it had, the big clover leaf type that went around and around, and we changed that to make it straight in the plat. The replat simply is putting some lots on there, some residential lots. I just wanted to let you know that and make sure you did not have a problem with it.
I think we're okay.
Okay, then we will proceed, thank you. The plat, the replat of the preliminary plat is a 37.44 acres. It's classified as middle school number 3. The change is from the original, Estates of Wolf Creek plat. Actually, this is the third, Estates of Wolf Creek preliminary plat. It's at 191st and Ridgeview, the intersection. It's an RP1 planned, single-family district. And the, preliminary plat, like I said, the changes are, the houses along the street that was originally platted is just for the school. We distributed the applications to the various consultants. There are a few little items as far as, like Water District number 1, they're still working on some water stuff and things like that, but it does not affect the plat itself. More, like I always say, we will have some additional easements on these, especially this, a project of this size. The existing preliminary plat shows 442 multifamily units, and some utility easements and dimensions are shown on there. Right-of-way and utility easements are shown with dimensions that meet the minimum requirements for the city and also the RP zoning, planned district zoning. The city will provide sanitary sewer and Johnson County 1 will provide water. Staff has looked at it internally, and like I already commented, that we thought that it should come back with the streets shown on there, and the cul-de-sac had stopped from, you can see the cul-de-sac going from the north, or from the south to the north, is now a permanent cul-de-sac there. You see where I'm talking about there? Anyway, from the south to the north, that cul-de-sac bubble right there, yes, that'll be a permanent cul-de-sac now. So, and not tie back into there. And then, right now, that is, green space. So it'll be some additional green space. City at large, on this, some of the additional comments from staff or staff comments, obviously, city at large granted access to the trail system, and it's a school, so obviously that'll happen. The applicant will need to pay a park fee, though, for each one of the houses that is now, there's 10 houses that is being added to this preliminary plat. Improvement agreement must be signed, and that's a $300 per house park impact fee, or 10 cents a square foot if the school district, because it's a commercial, would have to pay any, but they meet the requirements for open space, so there won't be a park charge, the 10 cents for them, because they have plenty of open space here. Street trees will need to be planted, and the distance of that's 40 foot. Between trees, a 2.5 inch caliper, and location of trees will be coordinated with the city so that it does not interfere with all types of things, fire hydrants and stop signs and street lights and all that. And they must be granted for no less than 2 years, the landscaping. You can approve it, deny it, or continue it to a future meeting and notify the applicant. Staff recommends approval of plat 30-2020. And would like to proceed on with the final plat in this meeting.
I don't think I have any questions, other than, I was a little confused. It said, you had multifamily on there, but isn't that west of the site, or is it on?
The site originally had a area of multifamily also included in it.
But is it zoned RP4 or 1? I mean,
It's zoned, this area is RP1,
Okay. I see.
just this
Went over.
area.
Gotcha.
The area the school took up and all, they took up some commercial and the RP4 area. And that's why, I think they started looking at it and saying, wait a minute, there's a chunk of this that could still be utilized for houses. So, because it's unusual that, it would come in, especially as a full package with the school, and then come back and, as a change, so.
Okay. You have any questions?
As I recall, the last time this came up was we had questions about the turning lanes. Has any of that been addressed, or is this not the right one to address this one?
It's not considered in the preliminary plat, but all the items were addressed with the site plan and the CUP as discussed and conditioned by planning commission. We're in talks right now with the school district on how all that will function. That it's part of the improvement agreement on the original improvement agreement. And yes, the school district is funding, and we will participate in it, though, since it is a city street. We will have to lead the charge on all the engineering and things like that. So, out-of-pocket monies to the city, though, is minimal. Let me put it that way. And really, so I might as well just explain that. At the corner of 191st and Ridgeview, the city is taking care of that deep ditch and all. there's several reasons. One, that before long, that's going to be a detour lane when the roundabout work starts. So in conjunction with everything, the city is participating a little bit on some of the improvements in the area. But it did get changed in the site plan and changed with the improvement agreement and the CUP.
Any other questions? Okay, if not, I think we're just looking for a motion at this point.
Motion to recommend approval of the preliminary plat, application plat 00030-220 as presented by staff.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion been seconded to approve the preliminary plat 00030-2020, Estates of Wolf Creek, Spring Hill Middle School, number 3, as presented by staff. Start the vote on the left.
Aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. Next item is the final plat, 000-029, Estates of Wolf Creek, Spring Hill Middle School. Mr. Burton, you have the floor.
Thank you again. So this kind of puts it all, what we were talking about, you can see now, there's 10 lots involved in this. It's a 2.89 acre plat. Look, if you look at the plat, you'll see the 10 lots that are gonna be developed there in conjunction with the school, middle school number 3. The owner of this will be 191st Street Investors LLC and Wolf Creek Development LLC. This will be the 8th Wolf Creek, Estates of Wolf Creek, 8th plat. 10 lots, 1 common tract that we spoke about. Separate profiles and cross sections and all the utilities and all of are in works with the city engineer. We've provided this to all consultants and utilities. The only one that's working on a plan right now is Water One. They have water there. It's just making sure that they can loop for this middle school and the rest of the development to come. The park fee we spoke about be $300 per lot. If the developer chooses not to allow the general public to utilize the existing improvements in the Estates of Wolf Creek. We haven't had any trouble with that at all. And of course that will continue to be maintained by the Homes Association, used by the general public. It does comply with the comprehensive plan, and this plat, it was platted for the school, CUP and the site plan. There was some requirements, and it has been approved by the governing body. The Planning Commission can recommend approval of the application to the governing body, deny approval to the governing body, and notify the applicant, or table it and notify the applicant. Staff recommends approval of plat 29/2020, Estates of Wolf Creek, 8th plat.
And I also want to say that the same disclosures that we had on the preliminary plat apply to this. We didn't go over them again, but they apply to this final plat. If that, or should we redisclose everything? That's
No, it would have carried on.
Okay.
If you didn't have a problem with the preliminary plat, you wouldn't,
Okay.
because it is all owned by the school.
I don't have any additional questions.
Move that we approve the final plat.
I second it.
We have a motion's been seconded to approve the final plat
000.
029/2020 as presented by staff.
Yes.
Estates of Wolf Creek, Spring Hill Middle School, number 3. Start the vote on the left.
Aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
The next item in this is the final plat 0000025-2020, Bear Creek number 2. Thanks, Josh, for coming by. Oh, and I wanted to, I think we had a question in the crowd, but we normally don't do that at this point in the process, but after the
Do
end.
you want to,
I just wanted to.
Go ahead.
Cause I didn't see on the, what was the width of that street?
it's, the actual width of the street is 28 foot back to back. The right of way, I believe, is a 65 foot right of way. I could check the right of way,
Oh, that's
but
all right. I just
60.
wanted to make sure it was a wide enough street, because that's where people will park and there'll be problems later on if it's not wide enough.
And we're gonna address the parking, with the traffic safety committee.
All right, I think we're on the final plat. I already said 0000025-2020, Bear Creek 2. Originally approved the conditions on 8/20 special meeting. Mr. Burton, you have.
So, we did not rewrite a staff report on this. It's, the issue right now is that, the subdivision regulations clearly state that any platted, lots will, contain sidewalks. And we take care of that at the building permit stage when they bring in the plot plans. The planning commission said, hey, we think that it's best to have the sidewalk east-west and tie into the facility that is to the west. And then, I started working with Public Works the next day, trying to get a plan to go all the way to Main Street. The applicant and the engineer called and felt like that they should not have to put sidewalks in at all because unimproved street. And the code doesn't address unimproved or improved, it says you have to put sidewalks in. With our strategic planning, or with our strategic sidewalk initiative that we're working on right now, and then with the planning commission, thoughts on sidewalks and all. So I did tell the applicant all that I would bring it back and allow you guys to speak with him about it. Staff does not change their mind. We still think that all the sidewalks should be put in, but if planning commission so chooses the east-west sidewalk, then that's what we would govern and submit to council. So I think the applicant and the engineer wants to speak, or maybe just the engineer, so.
Yeah, you could.
Do you have any questions for us real quick, or?
I don't
Okay,
have any questions for you,
all right, thank you.
unless somebody else does.
Todd Allenbrand, Payne and Brockway, 426 South Kansas Avenue, representing the owner of Bear Creek, Paul Atterbury, who is in the audience. First off, I'm sure you guys are aware, but I kind of want to let you know how we got to this point. And I'm sure you've heard this and dealt with it. When we were supposed to have gone to a planning commission about 2.5 months ago, and you didn't have a quorum. So we got continued to the next planning commission meeting, didn't have a quorum. So we were told it was going to go to city council and get addressed at city council. I come to the city council meeting to only find out that you guys had scheduled a special meeting and I was not notified. The applicant was not, the owner was not notified to address the comments about requiring a sidewalk. So I just want to point out that, you approved a stipulation that one, we didn't have a chance to discuss, and two, we didn't agree with, unbeknownst to us, which is kind of a shame, in my opinion, that happened. So we're back where we're at. And I understand and appreciate the requirements for sidewalks. I mean, it's, they're important for connectivity with residents. I think in this case, it's hard to paint a wide, broad brush that, okay, we have to have a sidewalk. And I don't think that you have the ability to put exhibits up on the screen. So if I would have known that, I would have brought you guys some little, I would have brought more pictures. But if you can see it, I know it's gonna be really hard. This is looking, and if you want, I mean, I'd be glad to let you guys pass this around. This is looking south down the property, so the property is right over here to the right side of the picture. It's really hard to see, but right in the middle of the ditch is a stake, which is their property line. The street, I believe that's Jefferson that runs north-south. That street is off-center by probably 15 feet. So in other words, the requirements for sidewalks are you put a sidewalk 1 foot into the right-of-way, and then the sidewalk drains back into the right-of-way. Well, in this case, the right-of-way is the ditch. So in other words, putting the sidewalk north-south is almost impossible because you would have to improve the street to get it to work, because the sidewalk would be setting in the street. The other issue is, okay, can we move the sidewalk onto the property? Well, one, I don't think a person buying a house wants a sidewalk setting 8 feet or 10 feet or 15 feet into the property. Well, if you notice, there's some large walnut trees that's approximately 8 feet off his property line into the lot. Well, I don't think we want to tear down 60, 70-inch walnut trees to put in a sidewalk. Okay, and then on the east-west street, this is looking west. There's also a slight ditch. It's really hard to see. It's very flat. If you guys have ever been to that corner, Jefferson and Johnson Street, it's very flat. The problem is that this street what also is off-center, so it's a little bit further north. So that means that the ditch further north by like 3 feet being centered, whereas the other street, the north-south street, is off by 15 feet. So that means that the current slight ditch that runs in east-west here is sitting, as they typically are in a ditch section street, which you guys are aware of, just off the street. There's a little tiny pump to make sure that it drains on, you know, to the street, that it gets off. On the other side, it just falls to the south. Well, to build the sidewalk east-west, that means he's going to have to install the sidewalk south of the berm, which means it won't be able to drain correctly according to standards, which is typically draining back to the right-of-way. So whatever gets built out there today is going to be thrown away in the future if the street's improved. So, you know, the issue is that, okay, it's a cost on him today, an extra cost that shouldn't really be needed at this point in time based on the street. But it's going to be even an additional cost for the city because, like I said, whatever gets built today based on the grade is not going to be not going to work. It's going to have to be tore out, which means the city's going to have to pay to have something demoed out and paid to have something put back in. It makes more sense, as Patrick's saying, if they're trying to get a design to take sidewalks to Main Street, if I'm understanding that correctly, it makes more sense to design a sidewalk all in a long run where you can address all the issues. There's also going to be other issues by putting the sidewalk in there. To tie into the north-south street, we have to put a culvert under the sidewalk, which potentially could create some drainage problems, which, you know, I don't know, without really evaluating it, could cause the water to be impeded and could get back up onto the street and causing other issues. So, I mean, I think at this point, really in these areas in the cities where there's no curb and gutter and it's just asphalt with ditch sections, if there needs to be improvements, that really needs to be looked at like a whole block length, not just one lot. Not to mention, there was some talk that the property owners to the west wanted a sidewalk, except who's going to build the sidewalk? There's an alley between the two pieces of property, which is owned by the city of Spring Hill. So, I mean, that's another issue to think about. I mean, there's a lot of issues that I think that it's real easy as a planner or a city public works official to just broad brush it and say, okay, we got to have sidewalks. Well, you really need to look at the situation on the ground before that makes that you know, you put that out there. It's just a large burden, not a large, great burden, but a pretty big burden for the developer to put in, you know, a $5,000 sidewalk that's most likely, in my opinion, is going to be tore out in the future. So we were just requesting that not be a stipulation carried on to the city council. Now, the developer, for some relief, is willing to come into agreement with the city, granting a temporary construction easement at the time the roads needs to be improved, at no cost to him or to the city. He'd be willing to sign the agreement, which would go with the property, so any property owner would have to sign the agreement. So in other words, if you guys understand how roads work when they're improving the cities have to get permanent easements and or temporary construction easements to construct it. So the developer, Paul, would be willing to come in agreement saying he will grant the temporary easement with no fee to, no cost, no reimbursement to him. Already, we're platting a 10-foot utility easement that currently isn't on the site that allows for the construction of sidewalks. So if the city would come in and develop that whole block and put sidewalks, at least on this piece of property, they currently would have 10 feet where they wouldn't have to pay him to get onto his property. They have the right by prescription for the utility easement. They would just have to pay for anything outside. But again, like I said, he would be willing to come in agreement with the city saying he won't oppose sidewalks and will grant the easement with no reimbursement to him. And if that's it, if you guys have any questions or you would rather, you'd like to look at the photos, I also have another one, an aerial looking above it, and it's kind of really easy to see. You can see there's a dark line up on the north end, and that is the actual ditch on the road. But it's really, there's hardly no fall on this thing east to west on the north end. So if you're interested, I'd be glad to
You want to?
hand these out.
I mean, I think it's fine if you want to bring them up here and.
Okay, I'll just,
So on Johnson Street, you're saying that it's essentially, there's a berm damming any sort of runoff from the sidewalk going into.
Johnson
soil?
Street's the east-west street.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's the edge of the road, a slight ditch section, a little bit of a berm, and I think they did that just to keep the water from running onto the property, because once you get on the south side of the berm, it all drains straight south. So, we didn't shoot it out to get elevations, but just based on my visits out to that site, just based on that visits, he would probably have to fill, to get it to meet the typical section for the city, draining the sidewalk back to the right of way, he'd probably have to fill at least a foot or more just to get the sidewalk up at the right of way, and then have to figure out how to, migrate over that berm.
Can you cut the berm?
Well, we could probably cut the berm, but then again, the sidewalk is farther south than the berm. Oh, is that,
Yeah, you can show the pictures.
that'll work out. That was hidden back there. Which way do I need to turn this out?
Turn it counterclockwise.
Yeah, there you go.
This?
There you go.
Okay. Oh, here we go.
So that's Jefferson Street.
Yeah.
I'd want to see
Yes.
Johnson. I think Jefferson, yeah, I agree. There's a hard.
Can you see
Yeah.
where my finger is? That line right there, that is the property line. That's actually his property corner
Right.
of the right of way.
West.
And it's hard to see here, but here's the other, this is looking west on Johnson, and it's really hard to see, but right here is the edge of pavement. There's a slight depression right in here, and then it goes up into this berm, and then it all just drains down to the south as it goes. And I'm sure that berm is there because that's what they used to create the ditch section. And unfortunately, it's very hard to see, and it's, in the shadow. But you can see on this one, should I get this right here? This is north, but right here is the ditch, is where there's a little darker in there. And about right here is a little high point where it breaks and goes back to the east and then back to the west.
So why wouldn't the sidewalk work as the berm?
It's because the sidewalks set 1 foot off this property line right here. That berm is probably 5 or 6 feet further north of the property line.
And what's the top of that berm relative to the bottom of the berm where the sidewalk elevation would be? I mean, you're cutting 6 inches off or 12 inches off of that berm?
Yeah, it's probably about somewhere between half a foot to a foot. It depends on where you're at. It's obviously deeper as you come south because we're getting down and turn the corner. But part of the issue is that without a street design, it's hard to really, without evaluating the whole street, assuming that you could put the street, if you did a new street, you could put it right where it's at. I don't know, there's a lot to look into, drainage and such around that whole area. Plus there's no sidewalk out here in this whole, for blocks, either direction. There is to the south, I think it's called, correct me if I'm wrong, Spring Street, I believe. There's sidewalk, but again, that's an approved street with curb and gutter. And they put a sidewalk in. And I know that there are a few houses, I'm not real familiar with Spring Hill, but I did drive around the neighborhoods and looked, and it appears there's probably 3 or 4 houses that were probably built within the last year, maybe 2, based on the grass that's growing up, and they have no sidewalks along the streets.
So I guess, and I'm not speaking for everyone up here, but our concern is that we're not very optimistic that these streets over here are gonna be improved anytime soon in the near future, including infrastructure, storm, sidewalks. And our goal up here is the safety of the community and the kids. So we'd ask you, those kids that are walking along the street, how can we improve that situation? We see this as an opportunity to improve the circulation within the site. I agree with you there on, is it Jefferson, the north-south? That presents us pretty serious hardship, but I work with grading too, and that throughout my day job. A 6-inch berm, I can see a little cut and fill balance opportunity there, and I don't know if it's just something too, we can prep the area to receive a sidewalk in the future of sorts, but I think we need to, I'm not worried, I have no place to say this because I'm not the applicant, but I don't see these roads being improved anytime soon. To say, well, they're just gonna throw away these sidewalks. I think these sidewalks would honestly deteriorate before the city's ever near putting in streets here. I don't know what you guys think.
Well, living in that section of town, and there are sidewalks on part of my property, these streets aren't gonna be improved before that sidewalk, they'll have to be torn out and replaced.
Well, that's fair enough, and I understand that, but I think, again, there's mechanisms that the city has to build sidewalks. Even if it's not streets, they have mechanisms where you can get funds to build sidewalks and do improvements for sidewalks for multiple blocks. I just think it would be a better product. A better product for the city if they would look at the whole block, especially if you've got a property owner that's to the west, supposedly, that would like to have a sidewalk, which, whether that's correct or not, that apartments to the west, if that's who's interested in having the sidewalk, if anybody understands Johnson County Ames, it's not exactly correct how it lines up. But, their parking lot appears to be out in the right of way, which potentially might not be correct. But one of our exhibits we had for the house placement is the actual roads located, and you can kind of see the difference. I don't think that at the time, maybe that's an option, if you guys are okay with that. At the time we do the plot plan and put the house in, we could grade, we'd have a better opportunity to maybe grade it and get it closer. But then again, there's a lot, obviously you understand there's a lot of stuff we have to look into. There's also gonna be some issues tying into the north-south street with that ditch being in that location. It's gonna be another issue. I don't know, we have to make sure, and that last section is going into the roads that we meet the ADA requirements, which probably won't be a problem, but, without looking into it, I don't know. And again, that's when it really needs to be looked at on a whole, not only on this side of the street, but also on the east side of the street, and what's happening, what's coming down the water, because all the water on the north-south street is flowing towards this location. There's a culvert that runs underneath the east-west street, and it's really hard to see. It's kind of got some grass and stuff filled in it, but as you can tell by the ditch on the north-south street, it's more defined than the other ditch.
Yeah, I don't think we want to disrupt the flow line of that east-west run. And I don't know how far west you would, let me get my bearings, how far east you take that sidewalk, because obviously you're going to run into that situation of your property line being within the flow line essentially of Jefferson, is that?
Yeah.
So there is a planning exercise that occur right there, but I just think we need to come to some sort of resolution or a plan, if you will. You're talking about the permitting earlier, if there's an agreement that can be had for the future, for whatever construction easements need to be had for a sidewalk. I don't know. I just like to leave this with some sort of an idea of a plan.
Well, and I think that would be, in this case, to make sure that the city gets a product that works for everybody, not just sticking in a piece of sidewalk that could be difficult to meet the typical requirements for the city's standards based on how it is today without looking at the whole site further down, especially to the west where you're connecting. But as I said, I think that the applicant, or the owner, I should say, is agreeable to do an agreement where he would just dedicate the temporary easement at the time the city would want to come in and construct this sidewalk.
At the city's expense. As opposed to what we're talking about is at your expense if you're having to put that in when you do the building.
Yeah, and if we have to put, if we have to put it in, I know that you said the roads aren't gonna improve, but still, it could be more difficult to get it to work with the roads that are out there. So, do we just build the sidewalk how the ground lays and leave it, which is not gonna be good for him or the city? I mean, there's gonna be some fill that's gonna be required within the right-of-way to get the sidewalk up, to get it so it drains back into the ditch. And
But you said that ditch is very shallow, so you already need to build it up to make sure that it doesn't flow into
yes,
property
but
owners'
where
property.
the sidewalk actually is gonna be setting is on the other side of the berm, downhill further than the ditch. If you look in this picture.
So you're saying it's further south than what,
Correct.
than the berm is now?
Correct, if you look at this picture, I mean, again, it's really hard, sorry about that. It's really hard to see. It's kind of right through the stop sign, there's a little bit of a berm and then then a little
I'm
bit
quite
of a
familiar
ditch.
with the area, I drive it almost every day.
Okay.
So I'm very familiar with the area.
Yeah, so the property line is further south, which you can see a little better on the exhibit where we showed placing the house, because we actually went out and located the roads. So that road, the east-west street, the edge of the pavement to the right-of-way is about 22 feet. And that ditch probably sits, it's like 3 feet off the edge of the road, and then the top of the berm is maybe another 5. So we're, if you take that into account, say it's even 10, we're another 12 feet further south where the sidewalk is gonna start than where the berm ends.
How far south would the sidewalk be from the edge of the road?
1 foot. No, excuse me, 1 foot from the right of way, so the sidewalk would be, so it's 4 foot, 5 foot, so it would be 17 feet from the road. That's
The beginning of
approximately,
the sidewalk or the end of the sidewalk?
no, the north edge of the sidewalk would be approximately 17 feet from the south edge of the road, based on putting a sidewalk 1 foot into the right of way, which is typical.
And Mr. Burton, did you have a comment? I think he. Wait,
We can continue discussion and.
yeah.
We'll hold our comments.
So what you're saying is the sidewalk would be south of that big berm that basically flows all the water onto the property?
Well, the way it works is if the road is sitting here, there's a slight crown in the road, so half of the road essentially drains to a ditch. Then there's a little ditch, and then there's a berm that goes up that looks kind of like this. And then south of that berm, once it goes down, that ground all just slopes away from the berm. So where the sidewalk needs to go, that whole area, that whole section has got to be built up to meet the requirements, which requirements are that sidewalks drain back to the right of way, typically back to a curb, or in this case, it'd be back to the ditch section. So we're gonna have to build up, because of with that berm there, if we knock the berm down, then all that water that's coming off the street is just gonna go right onto the lot. So we can't really knock the berm down to do it, which would be ideal, but we can't, so we have to build the ground up to slope the sidewalk back to the
But if you
ditch.
have to take the berm out, wouldn't that be your fill to build up your sidewalk?
Well, then you're potentially are gonna have, that's gonna be a lot of fill in there, because we've got an area, we're working with 17 feet between the edge of the pavement and the right of way to work in. So we've got an area where we're gonna have to do, even knocking down the berm, not gonna be enough dirt to fill that area to get it up.
So, Mr. Burton, so he's saying that, is there a variance that can be done with the sidewalk so that it doesn't have to be 17 feet back, or is that a hard and fast rule?
Sure, you can, agree that the sidewalks can set anywhere within that right of way. And then it would be up to the council also to agree with what your recommendation comes up with. Public Works did look at this, and agrees that at the corner that he'll have to do some work.
Mhm.
And if you recall the last meeting, you know, staff said that it was reasonable not to do north-south because of the way the lot and all set in there. The only other thing that I can add is that, just, staff and I know legal will come back and say that if there's any agreement at all on this, then the owner will also have to agree and place on the title work that they'll never, anybody that owned the property will not fight any benefit district. Because obviously if they're not put in, the city doesn't put them in, you know, the developers and all do, and that would definitely be a benefit district area. So if any agreement was agreed to, then it would have to be placed on the title that a future benefit district would not be challenged.
You'd also mentioned about the, utility easement, and where would that be at? I don't see that on any of the drawings.
The utility easement, as you can see on the plat, sets 10 feet into the property. So it's 10 feet on the lot side of the right-of-way, and it's all the way around both sides of the street for any future development. You know, or any future improvements. You have a utility easement in place where utilities can be moved to that area, or need be, you know, a street can be, you know, improvements for streets can be in there, storm sewer, if it requires any.
What we're looking at then is the sidewalk being in the utility easement? Is that
No,
correct?
no, the sidewalk would set, if, today, based on requirements, the sidewalk would set 1 foot north of the right-of-way on the east-west street.
Unless we gave you a variance to put it in a different place.
Yeah, unless there was a variance to put it in a different place, but then again, I mean, it's really, I mean, I know you're saying the streets aren't gonna improve, it's hard to say that they'll never improve.
I'm not saying they're
Yeah.
not ever gonna improve, but probably, Mr. Burton, do we have any plans in the next 25 years to improve those streets?
No, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, okay,
Well,
but,
it's I want to clarify, in the 10-year CIP, there is not. The 25, I can't quite comment
Okay,
for,
that's
so-
sorry, that's a little bit too far.
Yes, that's fine.
yeah, well, what I'm saying is that, you know, even, in my opinion, it makes more sense to try to look at doing sidewalks in full block sections, and then you get a product that's more beneficial to the public, in my opinion. So that's why we're coming here asking that you know, not require a sidewalk in this development. You know, it needs to be looked at on a bigger picture. And I mean, like I said, there's mechanisms out there, I know that cities can get funds to help construct streetscapes. And I'm sure that, you know, city staff is aware of those mechanisms. And also, that's exactly what I was saying, or similar to what I was saying that Patrick brought up, was that the owner is willing to sign an agreement that he would dedicate temporary easements or whatever is needed for construction of a sidewalk on a whole, and that it would go with the property, not with the owner, but it would go with the land.
Right, but if they build it on the right of way, then he's not responsible for it anyway, is he?
Well, to build the sidewalk where it was supposed to be, according to the typical standards for the city, 1 foot from the right-of-way line, you're gonna have to get on the property to build it, to do the grading. And, you know, if you need more easement, then he's okay with just dedicating it at no cost to him, or no reimbursement to him, or dedicating it, you know, at that time, or,
But you're saying that you don't want it that far south on the property, you'd prefer it to be in the right of way if you had to do it?
sidewalks do get built in the right-of-way. They're always 1 foot into the right-of-way, and then you have your sidewalk width, whether that's 4 feet or 5 feet or whatever it might be. Sidewalks, unless there's circumstances that don't allow it, they get built sometimes on a property owner's property with, you know, an easement, or sometimes they get built out into the right-of-way. But I don't really see it very often, if all ever, built in the right-of-way when it's a ditch section road. I think the sidewalk that's on the street to the south, Spring Street, if I remember correctly, that sidewalk is right up against the back of curb when they did that improvement on the street, at least in the section just straight south of here. And it appeared that it was the same way, you know, east-west down Spring Street.
So we keep on asking about if just moving the restriction from the 1 foot into the right of way, where, are we creating issues somewhere else? Now does this Pearson down over here have to do something different? Where's the sidewalk gonna end when it hits Jefferson Street based on already seeing that it would be a lot of work to put sidewalks on that one, so where is that gonna end? They're gonna run right into that ditch and they have to build it up and put in whistles underneath it, and what's that look like?
It could just be an extension on the current whistle that's there.
Is there a
Josh, what do you
whistle on going north-south?
Yeah,
Josh,
We're talking about a sidewalk going east-west
No, I know, where's it
Okay.
gonna end?
at Jefferson
There's a
Street.
ditch that goes all the way to the end of that, there's a ditch that goes all the way to that corner, right, based on the picture that you were showing?
yeah, this is,
So
This
if we're
is the
17
north end
feet
of the
back
street.
and we're gonna go all the way
Oh, you
across the
got it.
property,
Here.
right, so that ditch goes all the way to the street here. And we're gonna go 17 feet off that road, and I don't know how far, where is that tree at to that 17 foot? But if you think about it, where's that sidewalk gonna end when it hits Jefferson?
I know that that walnut tree sits into the property, I wanna say maybe 4 or 5 feet, I think. It's just south of the property corner, this stake. Let me see if I can hit the right button.
So like where you have that stake on there, would the sidewalk be north or south of that?
It would be north of it. That stake is the property corner, or the right-of-way corner for Jefferson and Johnson Street. So that's the northeast corner of the proposed Lot 1.
so,
So the sidewalk would be north of the tree.
Be north of the tree, but you have to build up out of, well, we have to do something with that whole thing on Jefferson with that ditch there.
They'd
Yeah,
put
I
a
think
culvert-
Jefferson's
They'd put a
not-
short culvert underneath the sidewalk.
Culvert, but still has to be all ADA compliant, correct, to put in the sidewalk? Or
Yes,
put
the section, typically it's from your property line to the curb or the street, you have to meet ADA. In this case, it would have to go back farther, potentially starting by the tree to meet the ADA requirements. You know, the other issue is putting a culvert under the sidewalk, you know, without looking at it, we don't know what that could cause for the, you know, we don't know what will happen with the water that comes under there, and if it's gonna impede it too much, and could it cause it a problem to slow it down too much? I wouldn't think so, but to meet the ADA, you know, we can't have a sidewalk humped up to put a big enough culvert in there. You know, there's a lot of work that could be generated from this. You know, it could be that we find out, okay, to make it work, the street has to be changed where we're tying in. So, I mean, there's a whole bunch of unknowns. And that's why, in my opinion, it makes more sense to look at a design for a whole block where you can address all the issues at connection points of streets based on ADA issues, drainage issues. I mean, these become a big problem, can become a big problem when you do improvements in ditch sections that you're not taking account for areas away from your site. I mean, I don't think that the city would appreciate it just, okay, we'll put a sidewalk in and we're just gonna go lay it right on the ground where the ground lays. You know, I think it needs to be looked at in a whole in these situations. And I know there's some talk that, you know, doing connectivities for these older neighborhoods, well, it's a great mechanism, you know, that can be drawn upon to look at streetscape plans. So, I mean, I'm sure city staff is aware of those mechanisms that are out there for cities to take advantage of.
Well, I will tell you that we've been trying to get sidewalks built in this section of town for the last 15 years. And so that doesn't seem like it's very practical. Because we've been looking at CIPs for the last 10 years at least. Going through this committee and keeps getting pushed down the road. So that's why we're kind of pushing on this sidewalk thing. And I understand that it might cause a little bit of difficulty, but I don't see that it's that big a difficulty. So that's why I'm giving you pushback on it. I'm just not saying, okay, let's just not do it.
And we required it just going east-west, right, not north-south?
that's correct. Planning Commission did not require anything east or north-south. And when I spoke with Public Works, they're gonna have to do work on that ditch anyway due to, they have to place culverts in for the driveways. For those, to feed those houses. So there'll be ditch work on that ditch. Going north-south.
Yeah, that would, he's correct when there will be
So they'll.
culverts for the driveways, but again, they won't be up so close to the intersection. I mean, the driveways are gonna set down farther on the site. If you looked at the exhibit we had, they're not right adjacent to that corner.
But the city does that.
That's correct.
They put in the culverts for the driveways?
Yes.
Yeah, we put in the culverts for the driveways and we looked at a culvert for a crossing there for the,
I just had them put one in for me just
oh,
last month or 2 months ago.
right.
And I don't think you're aware, we've been pushing sidewalks, as Troy mentioned, for many, many years on this board and have a lot of difficulty getting, and that's why we're trying to, going forward, any kind of new development, we, as a general rule, would like to see sidewalks in where there's any new development. So that's why this came up.
Yeah, well, I
And
understand.
mainly for the safety of the kids and the people that live in that area.
I understand that, and I appreciate that. But again, I just also wanted to point out that I drove around the city a little bit and looked, and it's hard to tell because I don't know when permits were issued, but based on some grading and how the grass has grown, there's 2 or 3 sites that were constructed that have no sidewalk. So,
Do we have any sidewalk, any properties that were built in the last 3 years that don't have sidewalks?
Yes, he's exactly correct because there was no plating occurred.
But this is a platted
That's correct.
location, so that's why we're requiring a sidewalk.
That's correct.
Yeah,
well, this property is currently platted.
And you're replatting it?
Yeah, we're replatting it so that we can put in larger houses.
Right. But that's, because you're replatting it, that's why we're having this discussion, I believe.
Okay,
That triggers it. I do know that back 5 or 6 years ago, and I'm sure you saw the house that was down around there, and they were, there was no plating at all, and they were issued a permit. That's correct. I think you remember
You
by the
you
one.
said
Troy.
5 or 6 years.
Which one is it?
Oh, the Long Ranch, not very far down there. Older gentleman built. Dennis was still here, so maybe it's been longer than 5 years. I don't know.
Yeah, we've just recently, the last few years,
Yeah, so-
came up with kind of a general rule to put in as many sidewalks as possible, just for the safety, because we're all over the city, falling apart and trying to get them in.
Now, I do want to follow up on this. With the strategic sidewalk plan that is out now, it does not allow homes to be reconstructed without sidewalks placed in. So if they were to tear one down, no sidewalk, or take another empty lot or something, they would be required to have sidewalks on the strategic plan.
Okay, that's good enough. Well, what are your thoughts, Josh? You're the,
I mean, I see I see the east-west one along Johnson. I don't have an issue with the berming. I see it as a cut and fill exercise. You're gonna have foundations in a home. You're gonna be building. I think there's gonna be plenty of fill there, if anything. So that doesn't really, I think, is a talking point. I think the biggest issue is where this thing terminates along Jefferson Street. I'm not really worried where it connects to the west or the alleyway. It keeps people still out of Johnson Street, and they cross an alleyway and they're in the parking lot. But I think the biggest discussion is how it terminates at Jefferson Street. I don't think it's realistic to ask them to put it north-south along Jefferson Street, because the only way you could get away with doing that is putting some sort of storm infrastructure in there, which just doesn't exist in this area. So,
So I guess, does that pose a question, if it doesn't make sense to put it north-south, does it make sense to even ask them to go and put that sidewalk in where it's going to be torn out to do all the infrastructure to go north-south anyway?
yeah, I wouldn't ask them to put it north-south.
I think we
I
just,
just-
No, what I mean though is, if we put something east to west.
Yeah, and that's where where does
out,
it end, or
infrastructure to do
yeah,
where
anything
does it-
else.
yeah.
where does it tie to? Do they leave it 20 feet short of the the right of way in that area, you know, considering that obviously the right of way is located in the flow line of the.
That
soil
would
right now.
solve all this if you leave it 20 feet short, right?
If it'll help, I mean, I met with Public Works down there, and we weren't, Public Works, Andy, you know, he wasn't just going to leave the builder standing all the costs and everything of this, and actually, he had just asked for the name a couple of days ago to contact the builder, and I told him it had to go back to planning commission. So I think that overall, I believe that Public Works can work with the builder and the developer combination here and resolve some of these issues. The main issue that I had though is to make sure, you know, like we do not see north and south would be feasible at all.
I'm willing to concede the
I agree with
north-south.
that.
I mean, we had a long discussion about
Yeah.
that the last time we
Yeah,
talked.
that's
about
why we
it, so-
didn't add it in, yeah.
But
But I mean, if Public Works is looking to work with them on that connection heading towards Jefferson Street. I don't know if it's an extension of the culvert with the
Sure.
area inlet within that flow line of the east-west swale up north and the
And
drainage
I hate to bring this up because I don't want to get the developer, the engineer, but there was even talk by Andy of piping all the way to and through the first driveway. And then ditch between the two driveways and have a regular culvert and then the ditch again. You know, obviously, we're getting down to the end of the year and funding's short. And maybe this won't start until next year when the new funding cycle. But, you know, I didn't want to bring it up because I do not want to promise anything because obviously it's not my department anyway, so. But there was talk of that as well.
But it is good to know for a decision.
I mean, either we're gonna follow what our stuff says or we're not, as far as new construction goes and when we're replatting something. So I haven't seen that you showed me that it's gonna be that difficult to put an east-west sidewalk in. I mean, we can be really difficult and say you have to put one east-west and north-south, but that isn't, I don't feel like that's very practical. I mean, I'm not trying to be really difficult up here, but at one point we have to decide we're either gonna start putting sidewalks in or we're not.
Well, and I think we all agree that we wanted to have that as a general rule going forward.
And I think we're gonna continue to have difficult issues like this as we go forward, because it is the older part of town. It's just, but how are we gonna get it done? This is how we're gonna have to do it, is
The city's not doing
pick
streets.
through it.
Yeah, the city's not doing streets unfortunately, so.
Well, yeah, if they're gonna work with them on that corner, I don't see why not?
I mean, if the requirement is to have sidewalks and all this stuff, all these new developments, and you get somebody that comes in and does an infill project and creates a house and you put 100 foot of sidewalk and you have this 100 foot of sidewalk hodgepodged all over the city, what happens for those 300-400 foot in between, or 500 or 600 foot or 1,000 feet that don't have sidewalks and no one does improvements? Is the city gonna come back and fund that? I mean, it seems like if you guys in the older part of the city are requiring sidewalks, it seems like there should be a mechanism that helps people to put sidewalks in, whether it's an existing property owner or a future property owner that's, you know, coming in and putting in a new product and creating more tax revenue for the city. There seems like there should be some benefit for that person or some way to help him to offset the cost to build a sidewalk.
I believe that you're talking about City Works working with the builder to do that.
Yeah, Public Works, I mean, Andy went out and took a look at it, and he realizes the problems, and the ditch right next to the existing, road right now as Mr. Almiron was talking about. And, you know, and most likely he'll have to do some work right there also in that. I really think, I mean, they worked well on your driveway, Troy. And,
Yes, they did.
and we're working on another one down here in the corner that, you know, it eroded out and the older gentleman, is having trouble mowing it and all. So when they're putting in it, and it's no different than the sidewalk here and there in town. We're putting in small pieces of pipe here and there as well, like on corners to get it on down, push the can on down the street, maybe. And then you do have to remember, you do have your new subdivisions like Brookwood Farms. You just required to put a sidewalk to nowhere. So we're not.
The high
it's-
school was
it-
like that for the longest time before they connected to Wolf Creek, you know, they were.
And I just wanna say that, all I was really saying is, you know, we're not pick and choosing, it's overall. So, new development, older development and all, so.
Yes. And I do think that's the point we've been talking about for the last 8 years, really, about trying to be consistent. And it doesn't mean that there's never an exception, but there is a way to get at least a portion of that on here. And, we've gotta get the little pieces in as we go. Because in the past, we've done nothing, and had we been consistent 8 years ago, 10 years ago, we would have had a whole lot more places connected by now. And,
So I do have to ask a question. Mr. Burton, I asked this last time. And we had a lot of discussion about this. I had mentioned a lot of the things that you had said in here about, we're gonna put a 75-foot stretch of sidewalk that ain't gonna connect to anything
That's correct.
on this brand new piece of property.
Well, it's
Can I ask-
actually, that one would be the length that, yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Right, I mean,
Right.
I don't
I
know what the
understand.
length is,
I
but you
understand.
understand what I mean. I had asked you in that last meeting, what was their options if we said that we wanted the sidewalks on there? There was an opportunity where they could just say, okay, we don't have to do any of this and still move forward and not replat it. What was that option again?
The option was that they could combine some lots and have one large lot. Was the option.
Just combine them and move and could they still split them? Could they still have two?
There's not enough room, it would just be one large lot.
Well, I believe there was some, and Mr. Burton, I should call you Mr. Burton instead of Patrick.
No, you can call me that. No, that's,
But I think there was some conversation early on, and I'm sure that Paul, if he'll remember, that we were told we could split this into two lots, what we currently have showing on the replat. So based on your conversation saying that if it's a replat, then it requires, you have to meet the ordinance. So I don't understand why we just don't go back and do that and split it into two lots. Just do a lot split and then build the houses on it, and then we don't have to build the sidewalk, is what think you're saying.
and that is an option where you can go back and present it to, staff with a, building permit. And if you can meet the, setbacks and the size of lots, then that is correct.
I don't think we're being unreasonable on just the one side, east to west.
No, I don't either.
And especially if the city's gonna work with you, the public works.
I
mean,
need to
what-
correct myself
Potential.
also. I'm sorry. This strategic sidewalk plan is being implemented. Matter of fact, it's implemented this October 1st, 2nd, so yesterday, I guess. Or is this the first?
Today's the first.
Today's the first, okay. So under the strategic sidewalk plan, though, it does call out that it would have to, do sidewalks. So
So if you go back and do a lot split, that doesn't change it.
it doesn't change it.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So it doesn't-
Now,
We're not trying to be difficult here. I mean, I know that we are being difficult, but we're not trying to be difficult. Does that make sense? I like to build stuff. I like to do things like, I don't build houses, but I remodel my house a lot and stuff. And so I've worked with the city, and they've been very good to help with the culverts and different things like that as I've gone through and done stuff. And I know that I've worked with Andy. I mean, he was very helpful and stuff. So we're not requiring it on both sides of the lot. We're asking you to do it on the east-west side because that's the most feasible. I mean, it would be very difficult to do it on the north-south. I think we all agree that it would be,
Next to impossible.
it would not be impossible, but it would be very
Next to 'em.
not cost effective
Not
to do
cost-
that.
yeah.
And we see that the east-west is cost effective with what you're looking to do with the houses. And so we're trying to work with you on this, and we're not trying to just be like, oh, this is a hard and fast rule, we're not gonna change anything. So I feel like we're trying to work with you on this, and not just like say, it has to be this way, no other way, our way or the highway, because that's not what we're talking about.
Well, I understand that, and I understand obviously where you're coming from. But, you know, I think we're making a good case that this really needs to be looked at in a whole block section, not just a small section. And I mean, I know you say it's feasible and it's not gonna be that difficult. I mean, I don't know if you understand the expense of a sidewalk. You know, we're talking $22 linear feet just for the sidewalk. And any grading that goes along with that, you know, it's not, you know, you think of it, okay, they're building a new house and it's not a big cost. Well, it's a cost that's gonna get passed on to a homeowner. You know, so we're not only making the arguments that we're trying to benefit the owner of the property, the developer, but we're also talking about not passing on an additional cost to a homeowner that potentially, if there would ever be improvements on the site and this thing has to be demoed, well, that's another cost, not completely direct to that homeowner, but indirectly to the whole city. That homeowner pays for something they've already paid for before.
Yep.
Demoing an
the
old
benefit
sidewalk
of
and
the
putting down a new sidewalk.
But the city gets the benefit of the sidewalk though.
Mr. Burton?
I do want to clarify that, in these areas, the, only other option that is right now is obviously the benefit district, which that is a direct impact to the homeowner. You know, we could work with them on maybe a benefit district if the cost is a lagging factor on building the homes or something, you know, we could place a special benefit district on there.
I don't see anything wrong with that, but.
Well,
But I don't know that the owner wants to do that because it is placed on the tax roll.
well, and as Mr. Burton said, I think correct me if I'm wrong, but the property owners to the west were interested in getting a sidewalk in as well.
Yeah, they're already in the planning, and that's what spurred this, if you remember when, Cindy was talking about it and all, and they had talked about rolling it into their driveway area because he is correct that it is right up against the right of way. And I don't know exactly what all they were talking about, but, you know, that's the only one that's approached us.
Okay, do you have anything else to add?
If you guys, you know, move to require the sidewalk, we have the ability to discuss that at city council. Is that correct? Okay,
That is correct.
all right. That's it. That's all I had.
Okay,
Okay,
we appreciate it too.
Oh, well, thank you for taking the time. I know it kind of went on longer than you probably really wanted to. You would have thought a sidewalk would have been such a drawn-out process, but I appreciate you taking the time and listening to our argument, I guess, in a sense.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, do you have any other questions for Mr. Burton or
does he have any other presentation?
Todd? Do you have anything further to add, Mr. Burton?
No, there's no change, so there's no vote required.
Okay,
We just brought it back for reconsideration.
yep.
There was no change, there's no vote required, and it will go to the October 22nd, I believe. Oh, is that part of it, or, okay. It'll go the last meeting in October.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, the next item on our is proposed bylaw revisions, Article 7. Mr. Burton, you have this is about attendance of members, so we do have one.
Can we take a quick break? 5 minutes,
Uh,
bio break?
You have to make a motion, then second it.
A motion to take a 10-minute break.
Second,
Okay, we have a motion, and it's been seconded to take a
10-minute break.
10-minute break. You're missing it. We've won a little break, so there's a motion that's been seconded. We're trying to follow the right process. To take a 10-minute break. So we start the voting on the left.
Aye.
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 Motion passes 6-0. We'll reconvene here at 8:25.
We scared everybody off though.
All right, go ahead and, Mr. Burton, Pat, I'll call you Pat now, nobody's here.
Thank you. I do appreciate that too, so.
Just the YouTube.
Proposed bylaw revisions that we've
Sure.
been trying to do for like 5 years now.
And so,
This has been a productive.
so as you can see through there, it'd be Article 8, attendance of members was added.
Yep. And I have no problem with the way it reads.
Nope.
It's perfect. And I'm assuming this would go into effect November if we passed it tonight.
Yes, because it does not have to go to the governing body.
Okay,
And the only thing like, Mr. Hendershot indicated is that you really don't, yeah, all you can do is recommend.
right. And I'll be the first one absent, cause I'm gonna miss next, November 5th. I'm having knee surgery that day.
Like that's a good excuse.
So that'll be, I'll be the first one absent.
You only have 2 more.
And Mary said, you better get a note.
No, it's 5 in a year, 3 in a row.
We
Yeah,
can
that's what I
zoom
said,
you in
2
though.
more.
That's right, at home. I'll be home. Probably drugged up.
Can you zoom in? Will they let us zoom?
Yeah,
Says we could,
we could zoom you in.
depending how you feel.
Well, I'm having it that day.
Yeah,
I don't know.
You probably
I don't
won't
know.
feel like you're.
It's a 3-hour surgery.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It'd be an interesting
It
meeting.
would be kind of fun. I'll be a loopy.
yeah.
Be entertaining.
Yes.
Anyway, go ahead. I think.
It just, attendance as it's written as we believe that you wanted it.
Mhm.
And so it would just take a motion and a second and a third and a fourth and a fifth.
Okay,
You got it.
Motion to approve the bylaws as written.
Second.
we have a motion and, we have a motion's been seconded to approve the Article 8 bylaw.
If I may,
Go ahead.
effective date, like, next meeting is what I would think you'd want it. Okay, so,
Well, doesn't it
Yes.
have to be given, the new bylaws have to be given to all members on the board, so.
and we'll
we
give
can
that,
Say
or
effective
Yeah.
10/1 and at the,
you would, we
Once
bet,
everybody's been given the new bylaws.
okay, we probably ought to make it,
11/1.
5th.
the November, and that way we can get it out. I mean, it doesn't matter to us, whatever you wanna do.
Okay, motion to approve the bylaws as written with the effective date of 10/5.
There you go.
Second.
We have motions and seconds to approve the bylaws Article 8, as written by staff. Effective, you said October 5th.
October 5th, 2020.
Start the voting on the left.
Aye.
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 Motion passes 6-0. Okay, I think, there's a couple of reports.
Yeah, just the 2 reports on there.
Yep.
Other than that, we, I wanted to talk to you real quick about the comp plan. So, funding hasn't been as bad as predicted. The fund deficit, let me put it that way. So we can get started again on, the comp plan. So what I anticipate, and we'll do whatever, staff will do whatever the commission wants to do, but we can get all the refresher information out, all the notes that we had, written up, some of the stuff that staff had presented, and then start the first of the year. Funding a rollover to next year, we've already spoke about it to finance. The only reason I say that is obviously we're coming right into the holiday seasons. And we would like, we're talking about, the chairman gone, one meeting, and then trying to put, special meetings in the holiday season it's just not that good.
Sounds good to me.
I was gonna say, yeah, I don't see there's an issue with that. We've waited this long. Another
Well-
month or two is probably not gonna
we would still go ahead and start getting
Sure.
everything ready and,
Absolutely.
because I need to look back over it myself,
right, right.
honestly.
Yeah.
So we'll get everything back in order as to what we've already discussed, and we'll revisit some, and then staff put together some items, and, I'm sitting here racking my brain on what it is, and I can't remember, so sorry. But, we took it from other cities, you know, and put it together, and, so if that's okay, we'll get that information out to you, and then we'll get started full board next year.
Is there, any updates on the trail plan? The master plan?
What I did hear is that, they had looked at doing some funding for a true trail plan. I think everyone's aware that, you know, when I voiced this, I was really, really disappointed in the combination of the rec committee and our Parks Department on what came out of their study and all that. It wasn't what I thought it was gonna be. It wasn't what we had anticipated or talked about. So we were getting a new trail system, sidewalk, strategy plan that's being worked on now. And right now, they're looking at funding on it.
So is that the one that Viero firm was working on, or the landscape firm?
Right, the landscape, it starts with a T.
Yeah, well, so what was the final result? Was it just a narrative they presented, or what was it? I guess?
There, we have what they presented to,
must
the
have
planning
missed that.
commission, and that's what it came out as.
I missed that one. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and what, basically what is they took the proposed trail system design that's in our comp plan that just, you know, has squiggly lines and no real definition as to where and size and type and all that I think all of us wanted, you know, so that we
We're talking
can,
about rolling that into our comp plan eventually.
right.
The timing of it.
So, and it might be a case where we will have to take the lead on it and we'll
Yeah.
do it with the comp plan,
Yeah, fine with
you know? Because it does make it difficult, I mean, I'm not up here whining, but it makes it hard on staff trying to figure out, okay, does this look like a good area for a walking trail? And then you guys also have to think about it, you know, are we missing something, staff missing something?
Well, you have no mechanism to hold the applicants
And
to
that-
fire either.
Right,
you
and
know?
that's the other very, very difficult.
That's the thing where, you know, we come up with this comp plan, we have, it's, you know, for lack of a better term, I apologize, it's our Bible, you know, it's like,
No.
this is what you guys need to follow, it says it right here. Otherwise, we're up here, you know, enforcing. items
So
that are-
if it looks like that, it's just gonna go nowhere next year, then we will just roll it into a segment of the comp plan.
Okay,
And it may not be as fancy as what, but we'll be able to do it.
I know someone that can make it fancy.
I still have some of that transparent paper, so we can do it.
That fancy stuff.
Yes.
When it comes to all, like we talk about trail systems, is there anything out there that talks about how we're going to connect either side of 169?
No, and that's what we were hoping that, because in discussing with both committees, or both entities, departments, and one of them is an entity, one's a department, is we want to see a system connect to Veterans Park. And it just didn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, you have opportunity, I mean, so Mark, the Mid-America Regional Council, they have a regional trail corridor plan.
That's correct.
And it's how do we tie into that, you know, then we have Veterans Park, we have amenities like Hillsdale Lake, just to the south of us, you know, it's like, how do we serve as a conduit for those, opportunities, if you will, you know, and I think we need to come up with a plan, cause we're really in a sweet spot as a community to, you know, access those areas from the Mark regional plan.
Right, and a lot of people do not realize also is, you know, they have the old railroad trail that comes through Ottawa and down south and all, and it really is not that far. And then also, we're not very far at all away from Bull Creek Park. You know, as the crow flies, you can be there in no time. And with the drainage basins and all, well, matter of fact, as the sewer progresses towards us from Edgerton, you know, they're utilizing the drainage basins for those. And Edgerton's actually talking about, along with the park, Johnson County Parks, is to extend their walking trails. Now, they own a lot of ground there, and they've started doing really nice improvements there.
Well, yeah, and I'm just afraid too, because as you know, the north side of town, these pockets of development start to come online. You know, it's like it gets harder and harder to carve a trail corridor going through.
It
there.
does.
You know,
I'm just gonna throw out there, when I lived in Wisconsin, the community I lived in was 45 miles north of Madison. And during the time I was there, they connected all the way from there, all the way down to the trails in Madison. And that was something that was helped out by the state, but they actually utilized some of the highway systems. And that really has been nice. We were back up there again this year, and it is fantastic that it is adjacent to the highway. There's a lot of benefits to that.
Oh, sure.
And we have some of those opportunities here, and I don't know that it's always feasible that everything's going to be done through these odd
Yeah,
little places where you
Right.
can't get behind, it's not safe,
Yeah.
or for whatever reason, or there's not a stop off where you can stop and park and get onto the system.
Right.
So, you know, it would be beneficial to look at some of the things we already have in place and see what we could tack on to.
Yes, and I have talked to Mark several times. Obviously, they're waiting to see how their funding plays out, but and not just with this, Operation Greenlight, and Scout Camera, and all this, trying to get ahead of the curve on a lot of this, and they're willing to help us out on. Because of their plan and expand their plan, basically, is what I'm getting at, so, and it might be that we're just gonna have to take the lead in it. So no T-shirts or anything this year.
Okay.
No pizza parties, we're done, guys.
Hey, you give me 300 feet of sidewalk, I'll go.
Have a party on the sidewalk.
And I know it's a hard job, and I do appreciate you guys hanging in there on a lot of that, you know, and we're gonna have some more difficult stuff coming along.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Burton. All right, I think we just need a motion to adjourn.
No announcements?
I don't think, do you have anybody have any announcements?
I don't have any, but I thought maybe somebody else did.
Good point, I skipped that.
Motion to adjourn? Second.
Okay, we have motions from second to adjourn, start on the left.
Aye.
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 Motion passes 6-0.